You spoke again, and in the exact instant the words left your mouth, you felt something empty out inside, as if you had opened the cap of a pressurized bottle, and the pressure was precisely what kept the contents alive. You shared your plans with someone who listened out of politeness. You poured out a pain that was still forming. You shared a promise you had received in prayer before it had time to take root. And now you look at your day, your week, your month, and realize that nothing has moved. Worse, the peace you had before speaking is gone, along with the words. This video is for you who are tired of this cycle. It's not another motivational piece. It's a biblical, psychological, and spiritual key to understanding why your open mouth is sabotaging exactly what you most silently ask God for. And more, it's the practical path on 3 fronts to seal what needs to be sealed, without isolating yourself from people, without becoming a cold person, without ceasing to communicate what needs to be communicated. You will leave here knowing exactly what to say, to whom to say it, and most importantly, what needs to remain guarded within you until the right time. Let's get straight to the first symptom, because I know you recognize yourself in it. You receive an idea in prayer, or a direction while reading the Bible, or a dream that won't leave your head. Something ignites. You feel it's from God. And the first thing you do is grab your phone, call a friend, send an audio message to the family group, or post it on social media. You need to tell. It feels almost uncontrollable. And when you finish telling, you feel a momentary relief, similar to the relief of someone who has lifted a weight. But 2 days later, 3 days later, a week later, that idea that seemed so alive is dead inside you. You can no longer feel the fire. The direction is gone. You find yourself wondering if it was really God who spoke, or if you made it all up. And here's the truth few have the courage to tell you. You didn't make it up.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who were tired of living in the fog, ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.
The revelation was real. What happened is that it died from exposure. The raw sun of others' comments dried up the seed before it could take root in the soil of your heart. And this has a name, a biblical text, scientific research, and a solution. Before we continue, if you see yourself in these words, do yourself a favor, hit the subscribe button here on the channel and activate the bell, because what's coming now is the kind of content that can change how you relate to your mouth for the rest of your life. Now let me introduce you to the second symptom, which is subtler but perhaps the most destructive of all. You vent, all the time, to everyone. The neighbor asks how you are, and instead of answering "I'm fine," you open the whole book. The problem with your husband, the worry about your son, the sadness for your sick mother, the fear of unemployment, the frustration with the church. You leave the conversation feeling relieved, but in reality, you just dispersed an enormous amount of emotional energy to a person who is in no condition to carry it for you. Worse, you planted an image of yourself in that person's mind that they will begin to feed on when they think of you. Every time they see you from now on, they will see you as that tired woman, that man in crisis, that person with problems, and you will feel it in their eyes without knowing why. Psychology has a name for this phenomenon. Research conducted by the American Psychological Association on what is called excessive emotional exposure shows that people who share intimate details excessively, especially with casual acquaintances, report higher levels of anxiety after the conversation than before. In other words, you open your mouth thinking you'll feel better and end up heavier than you started. And the reason is simple. Venting without an appropriate destination doesn't heal. It just spreads emotional content to a ground where it cannot be processed. It's like pouring water into a sieve. You empty the cup, but the water doesn't go anywhere useful. And this brings us to the first deep cause of the problem, the one written in fiery letters in the book of James, chapter 3, and which few preachers have the courage to explain with the depth it deserves. James, the brother of Jesus, wrote one of the most radical passages in the entire New Testament about the power of the tongue. He compares the tongue to three things: the bit that controls an entire horse, the rudder that controls an entire ship, and the fire that can ignite an entire forest. Notice the choice of images: horse, ship, forest. These are three realities that the tongue, being small, completely directs. But what is most impressive is not the size of the comparison. It's the original Greek word James uses to describe what the tongue does when it is not controlled. The word is phlogizusa, which comes from phlox, flame. The verb literally means to continuously ignite, to keep in flame. It's not a fire that ignites and goes out. It's a fire that, once lit, feeds itself and burns everything it touches from within. And here comes the part that will confront you. James is not talking about the tongue of others about you. He is talking about your tongue, about your own life. Every word of disbelief you speak about your marriage, every lament about your financial situation, every confession of fear about your children's future is a flame you ignite within your own spiritual territory. And this flame doesn't stop burning just because you closed your mouth. It continues to consume your internal resources for hours, days, sometimes weeks afterward. There is a Hebrew word that carries the exact opposite of this conflagration. The word is damam, which appears strikingly in Psalm 37, verse 7, when the psalmist writes, "Be still in the Lord and wait patiently for him." This "be still" is not a request for you to remain physically still. The verb damam literally means to become silent, to cease internal and external noise, and in some rabbinic traditions, to seal the mouth as one seals a sacred vessel. It's the same root used when the prophet Habakkuk writes, "Be silent before him, all the earth." Damam is the silence that chooses not to compete with God for the final word. And here's the point that will set you free. While you keep talking, complaining, narrating your pain to everyone, you are, without realizing it, telling God that his word about your life is not enough, and that you need to add your own narrative on top of it. Damam is giving up that final word. It's trusting that what God has already said in the secret of your prayer is more real than any comment you can make about the situation. And this is the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus, told in a way that few sermons achieve. Luke chapter 2, verse 19, describes a scene that happens right after the shepherds came running to the manger, saying they had seen angels in the field announcing the birth of the Messiah. Imagine the scene. Mary has just given birth in a stable, far from home, in a moment of extreme vulnerability. And suddenly, a group of strangers invades the place where she is, saying they saw the heavens open. Any ordinary woman would have started talking. She would have recounted what she had experienced in the previous months: the visit of the angel Gabriel, the journey to Elizabeth's house, the singing of the Magnificat. She would have wanted to confirm the shepherd's story with her own. But the text says, "But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart." The Greek word used here for treasured up is sunetere, which means to preserve together, to keep safe as one keeps a treasure in a sealed place. Mary understood something that would take centuries for humanity to comprehend, that the maturation of the divine within a human life requires a silent container. She didn't tell the neighbors about the angel. She didn't write poems about the star. She kept it. And it was precisely this reverent silence that allowed Jesus to grow, according to the same Luke, in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. Here enters the second deep cause, and this is the one that science has demonstrated in an almost uncomfortable way over the last 20 years. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer from New York University conducted a series of experiments in which he divided participants into two groups. Both groups had important personal goals: finishing a thesis, starting a business, changing careers. The difference was simple. One group was instructed to publicly announce their goals, the other to keep them silent The result was devastating for modern Western culture, which values exposure at all costs. People who announced their goals performed significantly worse in execution than those who remained silent. And the reason, discovered by Gollwitzer, is neurological. When you announce an intention, your brain experiences a sense of satisfaction, similar to the feeling of having already achieved the goal. You receive applause, you get the "that's great," you harvest anticipated admiration, and your brain's reward system registers mission accomplished. Result: motivation to actually achieve it plummets. The seed was exposed before the root formed, and you find yourself wondering why you always start things and never finish them. It's not a lack of willpower. It's an excess of open mouth. And that's exactly why I need to ask you something before continuing. If you feel these words are touching on something you've needed to hear for a long time, give this video a like. It's not my vanity. It's how the algorithm understands that this content needs to reach other people who are exhausted from talking and seeing no change. Your like is a silent way of saying, this is true, and more people need to see it. Now, let's move on to the third cause, which will perhaps affect you the most. Modern neuroscience has discovered, through research conducted by UNIFESP in partnership with international institutions like the Max Planck Institute, that there is a network of regions in the brain called the default mode network, which is activated precisely when we stop producing external verbal stimuli. In other words, when you truly shut your mouth, certain areas of your brain wake up. Areas linked to deep self-reflection, connection with purpose, autobiographical memory, long-term planning. Studies from Harvard Medical School, based on the pioneering research of Imke Kirster, published in 2013, have even shown that prolonged silence of at least 2 hours a day stimulates neurogenesis, that is, the birth of new neurons in the hippocampus region, which is precisely the region associated with memory formation, learning and emotional stability. This means, in brutally practical terms, when you talk too much, your brain gets stuck in the task-oriented network, burning resources to manage what you're saying, and shutting down the areas that most need to be connected for your spiritual and practical life to advance. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is the soil where the brain rebuilds itself, and this is exactly what serious spiritual traditions, from the Desert Fathers to Christian mystics, from Hebrew prophets to contemplative monks, have always known through experience, that the soul needs silence in the same way a plant needs earth. There is another Hebrew word that deepens this idea. It is chasha, and it appears in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 7, in that famous passage that says, "There is a time to be silent and a time to speak." The word for silent there is exactly chasha, and its literal meaning is to hold within, to contain as one holds something precious so it doesn't escape. The author of Ecclesiastes is not saying that silence is better than speech. He is saying that each has its time. And you, who are listening to me now, may be living a time of chasha, a time to hold back, a time when every unnecessary word costs dearly and every moment of silence restores you. The problem is that no one taught you to recognize when this time has come. You were raised in a culture that confuses silence with shyness, calmness with weakness, restraint with falsity. But the Hebrew and Christian spiritual tradition knew the opposite, that holding back is one of the highest forms of strength. Proverbs 17, verse 27, says that a prudent person restrains his words. And the Hebrew word for restrains has the same root as to save, to hoard treasure. The prudent person doesn't speak less because they have less to say. They speak less because they know the value of what they have to say. And here we arrive at the second biblical character, who is perhaps the most didactic in all of Scripture, about what happens when you speak before your time. Joseph, son of Jacob, in Genesis 37. Joseph was 17 years old when he had 2 dreams that came directly from God. In the first dream, he and his brothers were binding sheaves in the field, and his sheaf rose up while his brothers' sheaves bowed down to his. In the second dream, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. True dreams, prophetic dreams, dreams that years later would be fulfilled to the letter. But young Joseph did one thing. He told them. He told his brothers. He told his father. He told them in front of everyone. And the result, it is written in the text, is that his brothers began to hate him even more. Shortly after, they threw him into a cistern and sold him as a slave to Egypt. Joseph spent 13 years being destroyed from within, sold, betrayed, falsely accused, forgotten in prison. And in those 13 years, there is no record in the text that he told his dreams to anyone else. He learned Chasha, he learned Damam. And when finally, at the age of 30, he was brought before Pharaoh and interpreted the dreams of the king of Egypt, he did not speak of his own dreams. He simply served. And it was by serving in silence about himself that he finally saw his brothers' sheaves bowing down to him, exactly as the dream had announced 13 years earlier. Joseph only lived the fulfillment of the promise after he learned to be silent about it. And now I want to ask you something very specific. If you are here, and you feel that this message is exactly what you needed to hear at this moment in your life, I want you to go down to the comments and write a single word in capital letters with all the intention of your heart. The word is sealed. This word comes from Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 12, where the bridegroom describes the bride as a locked garden, a sealed fountain, one of the most beautiful images in all of the Bible to describe a life that has chosen to guard what is sacred. When you comment sealed in capital letters, you are making a spiritual declaration. What is sacred in me from now on will be guarded. The sealed comments on this video will form a silent chain of people who have decided, at the same moment, to stop leaking their own strength. Comment now before continuing, so that this decision doesn't remain just a thought. The third deep cause of your problem with an open mouth has to do with something that studies from USP in dialogue with guidelines from the Federal Council of Psychology have been calling compromised emotional regulation. When an adult, especially over 35, was raised in an environment where the only way to get attention was to speak a lot, and in a loud voice, they develop a silent compulsion for words. They don't speak because they have something to say. They speak because on some deep level they believe that if they don't speak, they will disappear. If they don't vent, no one will know they exist. If they don't share their plans, no one will validate that they are real. And here's the knot. As long as your existence depends on external validation of your words, you cannot inhabit silence without panicking. Silence frightens you because in silence you feel invisible. And this is precisely why God, throughout Scripture, leads his called ones to the desert. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before being called. David spent years hiding in caves. John the Baptist grew up in the desert. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert before beginning his ministry. The desert is the place where your existence stops depending on the word that leaves your mouth and begins to depend on the word that enters within you. There is still a Greek word we need to explore here, because it will give you a huge practical key. It is sigao, which appears in Acts 15, verse 12, when, during the Council of Jerusalem, the whole crowd fell silent while Paul and Barnabas recounted the deeds of God. The verb sigao has a very specific nuance. It's not simply being quiet, it's maintaining a reverent, attentive, expectant silence. It's the silence of someone waiting for the right word at the right time, from the right person. And here's the key. When you develop sigao, you stop producing words compulsively, and you begin to discern which words are worth saying. Sigao is the opposite of the bitter silence of someone who is quiet because they are hurt. Sigao is the confident silence of someone who is quiet because they know speaking now would be a waste. And it is precisely this silence that Jesus demonstrates in the most imposing scene in the entire gospel, in Matthew 27, verse 14, when, before Pontius Pilate, being accused of everything, knowing that every word spoken there could save his life, it is written that he did not answer a single word, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Imagine the scene. Pilate, accustomed to seeing defendants begging, shouting, defending themselves, finds himself before a man who is silent, and his silence is so powerful that the Roman governor himself is disturbed. Jesus was not being proud. He was not being passive. He was inhabiting sigao. He was recognizing that that word in that court at that moment would be a waste, and it was through his silence that salvation came to us. Now let's move on to the practical solution, because I know you're tired of theory, and need to leave here knowing what to do tomorrow morning. There is a protocol for discerning about your mouth on 3 levels that I will give you based on biblical text and contemporary research. The first level is about what to say. Before any word leaves your mouth, ask yourself 3 internal questions based on what the ancient rabbis called gates. First question, is it true? Second question, is it necessary? Third question, is it kind? If the word doesn't pass through the 3 gates, it dies in your mouth. This exercise, practiced for 30 consecutive days, according to cognitive psychology research published by groups from Unicamp in partnership with European universities, significantly reduces interpersonal anxiety and improves the quality of relationships. And before I give you the other 2 levels, do me a favor. If this video has given you something you didn't have clarity on before, share this link with at least one person you know is exhausted from talking, exhausted from explaining, exhausted from justifying themselves to everyone. It could be your wife, your husband, a sibling, a church friend. Send it privately. Say, watch this. You will be giving in silence what no one else gives. Permission to shut their mouth without feeling guilty about it. The second level of the protocol is about whom to speak with. And here I will present you with one of the most liberating ideas of this entire message. There is no one person who needs to know everything about you. Not even your spouse, not even your pastor, not even your best friend. There are circles of depth, and each thing you experience belongs to a specific circle. The most intimate circle, where only God enters, is where your developing revelations, your immature dreams, your healing pains reside. This circle is the place of Shammah, a Hebrew word meaning to guard, to watch over, to protect. The same word used when God placed Adam in Eden to work and keep it. You are the guardian of your own inner garden, and not everyone has a key to enter. The second circle is that of human intimacy, usually 1 or 2 people at most, who have demonstrated over years the ability to receive without judging and to return wisdom. It's not the circle of cool friends. It's the circle of tested friends. The third circle is that of daily coexistence, where most people in your life reside, and where you only say what is appropriate for the level of that relationship. And the fourth circle is the public one, where the rule is simple: never expose what is not yet ready to be exposed. When you start respecting these circles, you discover that 90% of your interpersonal anguish comes from having, without realizing it, placed content from circle 1 into circle 3 or 4. The third level of the protocol is about when to speak, and here lies the wisdom that Joseph learned in his 13 years of silence. There is a gestation period for everything God places within you. Some things need months, others years, and you cannot accelerate gestation by speaking. You can only delay it. Therefore, before announcing any project, any change, any revelation, do an internal test. Does this thing already have roots within me, or is it still just on the surface of emotion? If it's still on the surface, be silent. Let it go down. Let it become flesh. Let it become character. When it becomes you, then it can come out. Before that, any word is premature. It's like taking bread out of the oven before it's ready. It falls apart, and neither you nor whoever hears you will be able to eat it. There is still a final Greek word that needs to be included here, because it brings the dimension of the spiritual authority of silence. It is phemu, and it appears in Mark 4, verse 39, when Jesus, in the midst of a storm on the Sea of Galilee, stands up and says to the wind and the sea, "Peace, be still." The word for be still there is phemu, which literally means to muzzle, to silence firmly, to shut the mouth of something that was roaring uncontrollably. Notice the detail. Jesus uses the same word that would be used to silence a beast, and he applies this word to the external chaos. The teaching is clear. There is a silence that has spiritual authority, which is not the passive silence of the fearful, but the commanding silence of one who knows that their word, when it finally comes out, carries weight. And you only develop this kind of silence after practicing Damam, Chasha, Sigao, and Shamar long enough for your mouth to stop being a drain and start being a sealed fountain. When you start living like this, 3 things change in your life, and I need to warn you so you don't find it strange. First, some people will drift away. Not because you've become cold, but because they were used to feeding on your venting, and now the menu has changed. Let them go. Those who stay are the ones who fit the new level. Second, you will begin to hear your inner voice with a clarity that scares you. Decisions that were once confusing will become obvious. Directions that were blurry will become clear. It's the default mode network returning to its natural function. It's the spirit gaining volume, because the noise has decreased. Third, you will discover that what drained you the most were not others, but your own mouth. And this, while liberating, hurts, because you will understand how much strength you have lost over the years by not learning this sooner. But the truth is that you are learning now, and now is the right time. There is no delay in God's economy. Everyone arrives at their desert at the appointed time. Mary kept it in her heart because she knew that child did not yet belong to the world's gaze. Joseph learned to keep it during 13 years of cistern, prison, and silence because he knew the dream needed to mature. Jesus was silent before Pilate because he knew the cross spoke louder than any defense. You now are being called to enter this same school, the school of silence that builds, of silence that seals, of silence that gives birth. And that's exactly what the next video on this channel will be about, because once you shut your mouth, something begins to happen within you that few know how to recognize. The inner voice, which was muffled by the noise of your own speech, begins to speak again. But it has an accent, it has a timbre, and it needs to be distinguished from other voices that also reside within us. In the next episode, I will teach you how to recognize, with biblical criteria and neuroscientific reference, the difference between the voice of the Holy Spirit, the voice of your own desire, the voice of trauma speaking through you, and the voice that comes from outside and disguises itself as intuition. It's content that can save you years of wrong decisions made in the name of God told me. To not miss it, activate the bell down here now, because YouTube doesn't always notify subscribers, and this is one of those videos you can't afford to miss. End this video now by doing one simple thing. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and declare in a low voice or just in your thoughts, from today on, I am sealed ground. What God plants in me, germinates in me. What needs to be said will first be said to Him. What needs to be kept will remain with me. I trust, I hold back, I wait, I am sealed. And may this word sealed, commented by you below, be the first brick of the new construction that begins today, in the inner sanctuary that no one else will tear down.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who were tired of living in the fog, ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.